Back now on the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast, much like we did in the last couple segments. In this segment, we got another discussion that I wanted to bring up on today's show. Which teams are already facing must-win scenarios this week in Week 7 in the NFL? This is a fascinating time for me. I think it's a fascinating time because we're at a point where we got some great teams already in the NFL, right? That are facing off against each other. Some awful teams playing against each other, and some history between some players and other players, or some players and their former teams, and things like that. We're starting to see some of these narratives kind of come to fruition, right? In some of these matchups, which is exciting. But all while the trade deadline is kind of looming, it's kind of lurking in the background, right? While these games are going on. And losses in some of these games that we have coming up in Week 7, I feel like could incentivize or make the trade deadline, the idea of trading away some of your most important players, a little bit more enticing if you do happen to lose these must-win scenarios, I believe, for some of these teams, right? Looking at this week's slate of games, I believe there are certainly some must-win scenarios that these teams are facing right away for different reasons, right? It's not all the same context, but some of the must-win games and some of the teams that are facing must-win scenarios are included in this list of 5 that I have here. So we're going to start off with one game, the Chiefs and the San Francisco 49ers. This is a must-win game, I believe, for the 49ers because they got to get that monkey off their back. They got to get this idea that Kyle Shanahan, that Brock Purdy, that all these players on the 49ers can't run and can't beat this Kansas City Chiefs team. They got to get that off of their back, and they got to hop over that mental hurdle at this point because, yes, the Super Bowls suck. Yeah, you can't keep thinking about the idea that, oh, you gave up that comeback win in the first one, or in the second one you were so close, you were right there, and still in overtime you still lost. Is this team ever going to win a Super Bowl? Things like that, right? Just continue to pop up, especially now that you're facing off against the team that beat you twice in the Super Bowl. So they need to get over that mental hurdle. So just for themselves, personally, mentally, I think they need to win this game as a must-win. And also, San Francisco is a 500 team right now still, and I know no one's really hitting the panic button yet on them because, you have Christian McCaffrey coming back, right, eventually, and some pieces on defense. But, there's still so much time you could really afford to give up before you're really starting to feel constricted in the later part of the season where maybe some of these games where you felt like, oh, we don't need to win them yet, we have time. You start to run out of time pretty quickly in the NFL, especially with how good the NFC is. I'm not saying they're going to miss the playoffs or anything like that, but to be in the best scenario like they have been in previous playoff, appearances, I feel like they need to have a little bit more urgency about themselves. I saw that urgency against the Seahawks, so I'd like to see them bring it in this game. I'm sure both sides are going to be amped up for this matchup, even though no one will admit it. But I think it means a little bit more for the 49ers. They're going to be at home and everything like that. This is a must-win game for them for personal reasons, bigger or mostly more so than not. Also, this next game that I have here might not be so enticing because one team, the Raiders, are 2-4, and the other team, the Rams, are 1-4. You might be thinking, why is this a must-win, right? It's a must-win for the Los Angeles Rams because you could be getting Cooper Kupp back in this game, and if you go to 1-5, while this wouldn't be like a game-changing kind of cataclysmic win for the Raiders, right? They're still probably going to be all right this year. Maybe even under 500. But for the Rams to go to 1-5, it would really feel very difficult, and you would really have a hard time convincing me that the Rams, for as good as they are when they're healthy, that they can overcome a 1-5 start and still make the playoffs with their guys coming back eventually later on in the year, right? They need to get some of these wins under their belt to just kind of stay afloat and stay above water. And the Raiders is a game that you could certainly take with some of the injuries that you have, right? The Raiders have been just as inconsistent as everybody. They already lost Devontae Adams, their best player, and they're pretty inconsistent at quarterback, right? You don't really know what that's going to be week in and week out. So despite all those injuries, despite being 1-4 so far, I think the Rams must approach this like a must-win game to give them their best chance as we go through the season for them to be as close as possible to 500 when they play these other teams, these other divisional games, and when those guys start to come back, you're not so far behind in the race that these wins don't mean anything. They have to play for these games right now as must wins to give them their best chance later on to for those games later on to mean something, right? You don't want to just mail it in after 1-5 and just essentially give up. That really serves nobody any good, especially just giving a year away for Matthew Stafford as well. He's not really getting any younger, obviously, so to just throw away a year that you have with him would be a major loss for them. So they need to win this game for that reason. And I just talked about this next game, the Eagles and the Giants. The Eagles have to win this game. They have no choice. They just have to. The Saquon revenge game back in New York, the last time they played here, in fact, in week 17, I want to say, last year, the Giants actually destroyed them 27-10 before the Eagles went down to Tampa Bay and got their butts kicked again. So, there's a little bit more motivation there, right? You got embarrassed last time you came here, even though you thought it really meant nothing. You have that on your mind. Saquon, the last thing Saquon wants personally is for this Giants team to beat them, because it probably wouldn't mean anything if the Giants probably don't make the playoffs anyway, but they can just say that they beat Saquon. There's that reason, and the Eagles are just above 500 now, so you want to kind of maintain that pace of staying well above 500 in a divisional race where the Commanders are looking very good, and you don't want to fall too far behind them, and really distinguish yourself from the Cowboys as well, because the Cowboys have a rough schedule coming up. So the more you can create distance with them and keep pace with the Commanders, it's going to be huge for this Eagles team that still isn't very convincing. But if you could just get these wins, like against the Giants, where they should win because of how more talented they are than the Giants, this is a must-win for them. They have to win this game, especially with the outside talk about the interaction with Sirianni and the fans, and some of just the internal noise that you hear around the Eagles. Losing a game like this would certainly ramp everything else up again, or ramp it up even more. So, getting this game where you're expected to win, and hopefully they perform better, which would be the most ideal scenario. But the win is the most important thing. The Eagles certainly need to win this game as well. Then, very similarly again with this game, the New England Patriots at the Jacksonville Jaguars, technically, but the game is in London. The Jaguars have no other choice but to win. They can't even... Sometimes it does creep up on you, the idea that, maybe we could lose this game, right? Any given Sunday. But not this game. Not to the Patriots that aren't favored in any game this year. Vegas doesn't have them favored in any game this year. I'll say it again. Not to just kick the Patriots when they're down at 1-5, but it should mean more to the Jaguars, because they were thought of as a sneaky sort of underrated team this year, where with Trevor Lawrence, right, everybody was excited that they extended him, right? That was the right choice to make. And the fact that you brought in Gabe Davis, the fact that Travis Etienne was coming off of a pretty decent game, a year where also you needed to see Trevor Lawrence really take that next step to validate that contract that he got. And while he hasn't been the only reason they've been losing, but the fact that they're 1-5, much like the Patriots, who are in a complete rebuild mode, and then if you lose to them, that would really do it for this Jaguars team, I believe. I feel like the next Monday we would see some pretty big moves made by their owner Shad Khan, because he had big expectations as well for this team. I think he called it the best Jaguars team that they've ever had. So if you're 1-6 and you lose to this Patriots team, it's really not going to go good for you. Losing to a rookie quarterback as well. The Jaguars must absolutely win this game. They really have no other choice. And then the last game, it'll be the Jets and the Steelers, obviously, right? New York, this is their first test with a new and improved, new weapon, coming in, right? Devontae Adams. This is their first test to provide a victory, a much needed win for this New York Jets team, because they've already suffered 3 losses in a row, and to suffer another one to a Steelers team that is, in kind of a gray area with their quarterbacks, that not that necessarily hasn't blown teams away with their offense, and that their defense is good. You can give them that, but they certainly can give up some points and some yards to teams like the Cowboys, right? And the Jets certainly want to be in that next level of kind of contending teams. So this is a game now that you have all of Aaron Rodgers' guys there, right? Devontae, Allen Lazard, Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall. Everybody and anything that the Jets could have asked for, they have it now. So you can't drop your first game and drop to 2-5. That just can't happen. And if the Steelers lose this game, they're going to be 4-3, and they're still going to be all right. But the Jets at 2-5 in a pretty tough AFC, they can't afford to lose this game, especially with all that it has been made up of this Adams trade. So those are all the scenarios. Those are all the teams, right? The 49ers, the Rams, the Eagles, the Jaguars, and the Jets all are facing must-win scenarios this week, and we'll see on Sunday if all of those teams can go 5 for 5, or we're going to come back on here on Monday and discuss which teams failed in their quest to get these must-win games and what's going to happen next if they do happen to lose. So we're going to talk about that on Monday, but for right now, in the last segment of today's show, we're going to focus in on the NFC North division for one quick second and talk about how great all of them are playing, but also which team in that division gives us the most confidence that they're legit contenders, right? They're not just kind of hanging around because they haven't faced each other yet. Which team are we most confident in that is going to have the most success in 2024? We're going to answer that question when we return after this break.